Our first session this morning is How to Travel Better, a panel discussion on where you can go and what you can do on your holidays to bring the greatest benefit for the destinations and communities you visit. In this session, we'll hear from a panel of travel experts, including two from the Travel by B Corp collaboration, about what it means to travel better and hear ideas on how to become a more responsible traveller. If you'd like to ask them a question, just pose it in the live chat box and they will answer as many as they can. I'll now hand over to moderator Rochelle Turner, Head of Research and Insight at Mashare, to introduce you to our panelists.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this Sunday morning to discuss how to travel better. We're not saying at all that you don't already travel well, but we hope that today's experienced panelists will fill you with inspiration and ideas to help ensure that your holidays can bring the greatest benefits to the destinations and communities that you visit. Also, to help address your questions on some of the environmental concerns that you might have about how that holidays create. Two of our panelists are part of a new collaboration of B Corps in travel. B Corps are companies that meet the highest standards of verified social and environmental performance, public transparency, and have legal accountability to balance profit and purpose. I'm so pleased to introduce our panel. With us today, we have Zina Bensheikh, the Managing Director of Intrepid Travel, a B Corp. Intrepid Travel is the global leader in sustainable, experience-rich travel, operating trips in 130 countries across 7 continents. We have Tom Power, founder and CEO of Pura Aventura, also a B Corp, which has been inspiring active tailor-made travel to Spain, Portugal, and Latin America since 1999. Joining Zina and Tom today to help discuss ways in which we can all help shape travel as a positive force for good are Rory Boland, the travel editor for the UK Consumer Association Which, who champions the best travel providers and best places to travel, while also campaigning to improve the services that holidaymakers use. And he's the current British Society of Magazine Editors Travel Editor of the Year. We also have Juliet Kinsman, the Sustainability Editor of Condé Nast, an author, a broadcaster, and founder of her own sustainability consultancy, Bouteco. Welcome, everyone. It's taken quite a long time, in my view, but in recent months, we've been hearing a lot about building back better as it relates to travel and tourism. We're talking today about how to travel better. So my initial question to you is, what does better travel mean to you? In one sentence, if you can do that. One sentence, what does better travel mean to you? I think we'll start in alphabetical order today. So we'll start with Juliet.
Well, thanks. I obviously look at language. So the word better for me, I looked at the sort of etymology of it. And in Old English, better, it meant something of superior quality. That evolved in Anglo-Saxon times to mean a state of improved health. And by the Middle Ages, it meant being something more useful or pleasing. But for me, better travel is all of those. So it's something of quality, healthier people, planet, and an economy, and definitely something that's pleasing to experience.
Wow, we've got a bit of education this morning. That's all very good for us. Rory, how about you? What does better travel mean to you?
I feel under pressure after that wonderful explanation from Juliet. I'm going to keep it very simple, very straightforward. It's about taking more care about where we travel to and how we get there.
Okay, great. Tom? Oh, Tom looks to have frozen. So we'll go on to Zina for the moment.
No worries. To me, travel better means taking on a holiday that benefits us as travelers, but also the people and the destination we visit. I'm a big believer that travel not only can act as a force for good, but should act as a force for good. So that's how I think we should be all traveling.
Great, thanks. So Zina, in my introduction, I mentioned B Corps and how companies who are B Corps have to meet very high standards of social and environmental performance and public transparency and balancing purpose with profit. Can you just tell us a little bit about what it means for Intrepid to be a B Corp?
Yeah, so as you said, it's a certification that's given to businesses that balance purpose and profit, and that are legally required to consider the impact of all the decisions on all the stakeholders and not just the shareholders. And stakeholders meaning the environment, the customers, the suppliers, the communities, And we are required legally to actually change our articles of incorporations when we become a certified B Corp to attest on that. There are large there are large B Corps in the world, but a movement really has started to grow in the UK more recently. Brands like Innocent or Brewdog have been certified B Corp. In the travel place, it's a bit less famous. We're only 5 of us. Actually, just 6 since a couple of weeks have been joined by another travel company, which is great. And I guess to go back to your question, what I feel is really interesting about the B Corp movement is that it can help change some very profound society problems that government and non-for-profits not necessarily can do by themselves. So it's what I feel is the beauty of that movement, is that it can really create that profound changes for societies and help reducing poverties and tackle the climate change issue as examples.
Great, thanks, Dina. And hopefully we'll hear from Tom as well when we are able to get him back. One of the things that is really quite perplexing to me, I suppose, is that prior to COVID, when we were allowed to travel, Spain was one of the countries that came up particularly strongly as one of the more popular places that UK residents would travel to for their holidays. So the other day when I was preparing for this, I went on to Google and I just Googled holidays to Spain. And so much of what comes up page after page includes the words cheap, includes the words discount, includes the words low cost. Rory, what are the things that people consider when they are choosing their holidays, and where and how does sustainability fit into that?
Rochelle, you're going to set me off on a completely different strand of companies claiming deals when they're not deals. You're absolutely right. We should be honest and say that holidaymakers, for the most part, are driven by the destination they want to go to, the price they're going to pay, and at the moment, flexible booking policies as well are obviously really, really important because of the way the government is moving countries around the green and amber lists. When you survey holidaymakers and you ask them what's important to them, and Which has done this in the past as well, climate change and sustainability, it tends to come medium, even quite highly. So there is a case for people caring about it. I think the difference is that when it comes to booking, perhaps the action isn't there. Price and destination still override what is the overriding concern consumers have. And I think price and destination are personal, but thinking about sustainability, it can be a big topic, a big subject. It's hard to understand how your choices are important to the environment. How you choosing a different flight or going to a different place makes a really big difference because it feels like such a big thing. And we do try and talk about it in the magazine. We do try and talk to people about it. I think those providers that are leading the way, particularly in displaying carbon emissions, I know we're talking about sustainability more widely today, but when you display those carbon emissions, when people are coming to booking, when they can see how much carbon their flight, their holiday is going to contribute, I think that does make it more personal to them. And I know one of my favorite investigations that we have carried out in recent years was when we looked at flights to Malaga was one of the destinations because it's so popular. We looked at multiple destinations, multiple airlines, multiple flights, and we found that simply by swapping the plane type or the carrier you were going with, nothing about price necessarily, you could make a huge saving on carbon, up to half the footprint that your flight would leave. That for people feels really personal, really immediate, something that they can do. And I think that really is, if we want to reach more people than the people who are very involved and concerned about sustainability, we want to reach a larger market. I think it's presenting that sort of information up front alongside price and destination, because price and destination are always going to be the most important thing to most holidaymakers.
Great, thanks, Rory. So just building on that, Tom, I'm glad to have you back. Some glitches that we have to deal with now in today's world.
Windows updates that unbidden Windows updates. Perfect
timing. So I want to just ask about your company. We mentioned that you're a B Corp. Do you find that people are coming to Pura Aventura because you've got certain standards of sustainability? Do you think that it matters at all in how you're selling your holidays?
I think it matters, but I mean, honestly, are people kind of ringing us up saying, "Oh, thank God, you're a B Corp"? No, they don't. let's be frank. That's kind of, it's why Zena and I started talking about setting up a group that started to establish the concept of B Corp within travel as a reliable mark of trust within travel. But to be frank, I mean, we didn't do it for that reason, and I think that's probably true of many B Corps at the moment. We go through the kind of the rigor of the certification process because it's kind of the right thing to do. It's the kind of businesses we are, and so it's the only certification or verification that seems to be sort of actually fit us and seems to be duly challenging. So that's why we've done it. I got into running a travel company because I love the places. I have this sort of duty of care, this passion for these places. I don't want to be in an extractive industry. I want to be creating trips that are based upon a sort of a value exchange that really work for considered travelers. And that's why we did it. So no, I mean, people don't knock down our door for B Corp. But equally, I take Rory's points very. I think he's absolutely right. It's the sort of the person we want to be and the person we are when it comes to actually paying the money. But I think there's also a confusion out there. I think there's a proliferation of labels and badges, and people are confused. And actually, if there was a clear path for making informed choices and there was a clear sense of trust out there around a particular certification, then I think people will start using it. People will start acting in line with their stated beliefs and values more.
Well, let's hope. Juliet, you write a lot for the luxury market, and clearly that word cheap is not a word that comes up among that group very often at all. So I know that there are also some amazing examples of eco lodges and resorts that are just doing incredible things for their people, for the environment and the communities that they're operating in. So in your opinion, is sustainability ultimately something that is just for this elite that can afford to pay the extra?
Gosh, I don't like the word cheap at all, personally. Anyway, I look at value. That's much more important. And actually, I will say with Condé Nast Traveler, they do use the word cheap. They do often, I mean, rich people or people in any price bracket still like a bargain, and they still like value for money. But for me, I have to ask the question, cheap at what cost? And I think it's almost dangerous, actually, to this constant reference that sustainability is a luxury or for the privileged. For me, in terms of luxury, in terms of sustainable travel, camping, a surf shack, a homestay in Nepal, a B&B, an independent guest house, these are all sustainable options and they're affordable. I think it's just looking at what value means, and it's looking at if it's helpful to think of food. You might have food that is organic, but it's been flown in from Africa and it's got air miles. You might have cheap vegetables, the equivalent from a small producer that's local. But when you weigh it up, this is the more affordable and the more sustainable option. So I think it's dangerous the way sustainability, there's an implication always that it's more expensive. It's just a business doing the right thing and having less impact.
There's some good points there. I completely agree with you. We've had a question in the chat about offsetting and carbon emissions. And Zena, I don't think it would be right to have a conversation about travel without talking about this element of carbon and how sustainable and responsible tourism companies like yourselves do you justify selling air travel?
Sorry. It's important question and topic to address here. Intrepid has been carbon neutral since 2010, and that process has helped us so much to, first of all, the impact. We just talked about the impact of our business in terms of carbon emission, because to become carbon neutral, you first have to measure and then offset, avoid, and then what's left gets offset. It is today scientifically proven that being carbon or offsetting our emission is not enough anymore. And this is why we have decided to take the step forward and committed to science-based targets in line with the 1.5 degrees of the Paris Agreement. And we have, science-based targets that have been verified last year, and we are currently not working on our plan to decarbonize our business. So we are looking into different ways to remove flights from our trips. We operate in 120 countries, 7 continents. It's a big project. More than 70% of our emissions come from the operations of our trip, but also a part that comes from the running of our business around the world through our different offices around the world. So we have committed to move to 100% renewable energy, and also we have always been offering flights when customers want to buy flights with us that are then carbon offset. So it's not perfect. I don't believe there is a perfect solution right now, otherwise it wouldn't be the topic of the moment. It is a problem that we all need to look at, and we all need to act on it, and it will require not just the B Corp or the Travel B Corp to address it, but travel companies, all the airlines, and obviously the governments as well have a big place or big role to play, in tackling this issue.
Great, thanks. Rory, when you were talking earlier, you were mentioning one of the research studies that you had done around aviation emissions. How do you look at that in terms of, just selling air or promoting companies that are selling air travel in the first place?
It's a completely fair challenge. My primary job is publishing a travel magazine which encourages people to travel. Although at the moment a lot of that is UK based, as you would imagine. For me, I believe travel is important. I think it makes us more open-minded, it makes us more tolerant. So I don't want to see a world where we all have to stay in our own countries or only take, very, very short trips. So I think there is a place for air travel. I think in more concrete terms as well, it's of a huge benefit to communities around the world, tourism, to many, many places. It's absolutely essential. Travel and tourism can really be a force for good. And I think what I would like which travel to do, and part of the reason we're here today, all of us, I suppose, is to put more of the travel that does take place in the positive column, to make sure that it is a force for good, and take some of the negatives, because there are a lot of negatives, take some of the negative travel away. And so I think it's about moving the type of trips people are taking, how they go, and that will include air travel in some cases. I also think, someone who speaks directly to holidaymakers a lot, it's about pulling them rather than pushing them, and trying to influence them. Don't lecture them, because the more you lecture people about, you shouldn't be taking flights, you shouldn't be doing this, they just won't listen. So it's about illustrating to them why these decisions are important, how they can make better decisions. We already touched on that. And as I say, moving more of the travel that we do undertake into that positive column.
Tom, you're nodding away at that in terms of creating positive experiences from travel. Do you want to just perhaps expand on that a little bit more about how you think of this as an important issue?
Yeah, and I mean, I fully take Zina's points and Rory's as well, just in terms of, we need to change our attitudes to travel, just be more considered, I suppose, in our choices. But I think things like longer holidays, so flying less, but just going deeper, so sort of depth over distance, is a really important thing. But it's not. So we deal with that, the negative, the planetary negative, if you will, but the positives are right there behind it. So, and I think, Juliet, you were touching on this. Let's get away from this idea of sort of, oh, well, it's worthy, it's the thing I must do. It's incredible, the stuff that we're talking about doing. It's not that you're making a worse choice. It is, I just landed back from Costa Rica yesterday morning, right? And I was down in the south, in the wilds of southern Costa Rica. It's absolutely stunning. And you've got 3 amazing conservation areas: Corcovado National Park, Peñas Blancas, and La Amistad, that crosses down into Panama. it's this incredible sort of cluster of national parks. Corcovado alone has something like 3% of the world's biodiversity in it. It's an area the size of Manhattan. But as an island, it's no good. So it needs to link through to the others so that you get these species diversity, you get the intermingling, you basically don't get inbreeding. So for a truly resilient, robust ecosystem, they need to join together. Now, it's actually private initiatives, many of them tourism-based, that are joining these things together, creating wildlife corridors. So I went to visit a 3-room hotel run by an ex-banker who's had this sort of Damascene conversion, has bought 1,000 hectares of land that goes up from the Gulf up into the mountains and is joining these national parks together. You're staying in the most beautiful little hotel. I mean, tiny, gorgeous, beautiful. And it is doing good. You can go there and just have the most amazing holiday. You don't need to know that suddenly there's tapir and jaguars wandering through the gardens using the protection of this corridor to create, to become more abundant within the entirety of Central America. But it's happening as a consequence of tourism. What you're going to experience as a traveler is staying in just this exquisite kind of barefoot resort. And back to the Juliet point, sorry, just the start of it over by Corcovado, you can be volunteering, digging lettuces out of the ground. Now it so happens that you've got monkeys barreling through the trees overhead while you're digging up the lettuces. But, it doesn't have to be the exquisite little 3-room boutique hotel. You can actually just be rolling your sleeves up and having a great old time in with some biological field researchers. So let's get positive. The planet is beautiful. I'm all excited. I've been out of the country for a week. So, we can do great stuff whilst having these holidays that we love.
Well, I think we're all living vicariously through you at the moment. That sounds absolutely amazing. It is sometimes really difficult, and a lot of people say that it is really hard to find or to know where to start looking for these better options. Juliet, I want to turn to you about what are the kind of cues and words and places that people should start looking for this kind of information about how to start improving the kinds of holidays that they're taking.
That's a big question. I love that we're here. I'm part of the B Corp discussion. I think it's great that people should understand what B Corp means. There are so many certifications and accreditations out there. Of the hundreds of them, most of them you're just paying for marketing. So we need to look for any holiday that's provided, which has had a seal of approval from an organization which is actually actively helping that business be more sustainable, such as B Corp. That's really important. I also really think it's interesting. It ties into what you asked me before about cheap and value. And I say cheap at what cost? I think this is really the time for ethical and responsible tour operators to shine, because you might pay that little bit extra for their services, but what they provide in hand-holding you through the whole sort of planning process and assurance that you are booking a trip that is going to be as enjoyable as possible as a traveler, but will also be doing good. And all of what we do, so our conversation today, the people who are listening, it's always about educating ourselves on what does positive impact mean? How are we doing good? Because the truth is there aren't many trips where overall, in terms of environmental, social, or economic impact, you really are absolutely having a positive impact in every way. It's impossible. But if you really think about what you care about, and what Tom talked about conservation, for example, or socioeconomic impact, which is critical after the pandemic. There are so many communities that need our support through tourism. I'm currently in Portugal. I'm in the mountains. It's chucking it down with rain. And these little places that I'm staying in, these artisans, their crafts, they are going to be continued through tourism support. So it's really just educating ourselves, the storytelling, really taking interest in the details and trusting the experts.
I think that piece about education is really important, and Rory touched on it as well by saying, people don't want to be forced with this information, and it has to be more of a pulling them in and helping them rather than pushing it out to them. Zena, how much do you use your trips to educate people on how they can be more sustainable, or how what you are doing is changing the destination or changing communities? What are the kinds of things that you tell them, and how do they respond?
Well, we talk about cheap and we talk about value for money. I think Intrepid is a perfect example of a tour operator or travel company that can create a large volume of trips that have very good value for money in many destinations for different type of customers, different level of adventures, but that are extremely sustainable because it's been created. The company, the DNA of the company was from the very first day, 32 years ago, to be this way, to be a responsible travel business. So I think that's the number one thing I want to say, that all first customers to Intrepid do not book a trip with us because they necessarily are looking for the most responsible travel way to go, but because they found a great tour in a nice destination for a good price. And so what happened on the tour is that I think what changed everything and what made those customers coming back traveling with us, we have a feedback system where we found often that the local guide and the responsible travel score of the tour comes the highest after a tour with us. So what we do during the tour, really, I think one of the most important things is the role of the tour leader that start and finish the trip with our customers and take them through the different destinations, local communities, create that connection. We talk about travel being important to open people's mind, and I think this is exactly what we do on Intrepid Trips. We have local tour leaders who are able to create that connection, help customers to learn some local language, and really tell that story of that destination and those people that we visit on the tours. There is also an element of education around what we can do to be better traveler for the environment. For example, we would encourage customers to bring their own bottles, reusable or reusable bags. In case they haven't, we can always offer them on the ground. And we also explain the work that we do on the ground to support local communities, whether it is through the Intrepid Foundation that support little local charities in destinations, and what we do to also empower these people, but in the same time empower travelers to also understand the issues that destinations, mostly in developing countries, can go through, whether it's education, whether it's poverty, whether it's violence. It can be so many different things that then travelers will feel they have a power to kind of help solving and be part of the solution as well. So there's just so many different elements that we do during the tours. And we also have our operations team everywhere in the world where we operate our trip that really are here for making sure that we can provide that level of immersion and that level of knowledge, local knowledge that we really want to bring to our customers on the ground. So that's how we do it. And often, as I said, when they come back, it's the reason why they want to travel with us again, more than the price.
That's great. Thank you. Rory, we often now see a lot of companies that are, in a sense, they're quite anonymous. We book online. You don't talk to a person. You don't engage with really anybody. You might not know even anybody who works at that company, and there's no names that are on the website or anything. How can people ask these big companies questions about their sustainability policy or how they're giving back to the communities? What is the way that, or what should they be doing if we're all thinking that change comes through asking questions? But how can you ask questions to these companies that we might not even be able to contact an individual from?
I think in the description that you have given, you can't. That is the brutal truth. There is no way, if you're booking a holiday of that type, to really know what they're doing around sustainability and trust it. The use of something like B Corps and organizations such as this that interrogate and assess members is really important. And the reason for that is it's really difficult to do it as an individual. And this is something that which has done the most on in sustainability and will continue to do in interrogating the kind of green practices in particular that companies claim to be making. And we have found all sorts of greenwashing. The problem is that a lot of sustainability tends to just be marketing language used in company statements. There'll often be an area of the website that has their kind of statements on sustainability. Well, Which has looked at lots of these in different areas. We looked at animal welfare policies of some large holiday companies, found they weren't living up to them in some really disappointing ways. And people will have booked on those claims. They will have booked on tours, particularly those that would involve animals, on the basis that the animals were being taken care of. We've looked at airline carbon offsetting policies. In some cases, we found airlines weren't offsetting any carbon. So if you are a consumer, it's really, really difficult. Those sort of investigations take a really long time. And we have a dedicated group of investigators and researchers who are used to and take joy in looking at the terms and conditions of companies. So unfortunately, at the moment, if you move past, companies like Intrepid, if you're not going to book with a company that is specifically set out to do good things around sustainability, if you're looking at, I suppose, mass market tourism, it's really, really hard to sort the good from the bad. You are going to have to trust, really, companies, organizations like B Corps, those ones that interrogate, assess companies for you. Because as an individual at the moment, getting the information is difficult. Trusting the information is difficult as well. If you really care about sustainability, at the moment, the best advice is to go to one of those tour companies, one of those tour operators that is set up to do good around sustainability. That's the only way you can really trust that your decision is a positive one.
Wow, that's a challenge for the industry then, isn't it? And clearly a long way for travel companies to go. We've got some questions that I would just like to get to, but I wanted to just sort of wrap up with one question around holidays. And we don't certainly want holidays to be something that we have to feel guilty about. And I just want to ask each of you, are we allowed to be a little bit selfish and take holidays that allow us to feel good? Is that something that's okay? Tom, I'll start with you.
Yes. Yes, I think it's okay. I mean, be a considered consumer. None of us has perfection. So I don't think any of us is sitting here saying, it's okay, we've got the answers, just, book with us and all will be well. Sure, yeah. Oh, book a holiday with Pure Aventura, fantastic. But actually, if you're just going camping in the Lake District, and this speaks a little somewhat back to your point, Rory, about trust and which companies to trust. It isn't just about, this is about all of us doing our part. So as a consumer, you're going on a holiday, even if it's a kind of all-inclusive week somewhere, just go out, spend a bit of money in the local community. Just go have one meal out, or 2 meals out, or 3 meals out. It's about having 1 meal a week that's vegetarian, or 2 meals a week, or 3 meals a week. Just making these incremental choices. I mean, we're in a plastics reduction initiative that's called One Bottle at a Time. Just don't open that bottle, that little disposable bottle of water on the airplane, one of them. And that's something. And then try 2, then try 3, then try opening none of them that they keep throwing at you when you're on a flight. Any of these things makes a difference. It's like Yvon Chouinard of Patagonia, who's a great sort of leader in both in B Corps and in so many different ways, inspirational guy. But to do good, you have to actually do something. That's it. Comes down to it. But go enjoy your holidays, but just nudge, and actually you'll find your holidays are better. You're leaving the compound for a meal to go see what's over there, to go have local food, meet local people, just interact in some way, have a value exchange, rather than just treating travel as a commodity. That doesn't take that much, and suddenly you're in the whole space of sustainability and ethical. It's not knitted muesli. It's just you're waking up a different part of your brain, the kind of the traveler, the explorer, the adventurer. You're just going to find out new stuff. You're going to be learning. You're going to be enjoying. It's wonderful. Yeah.
Wow.
Either or.
Okay. Excellent. So I said we've had a few questions. One of the questions is about there is a movement to look at different types of sun cream, because some sun cream is affecting coral reefs. And anyone, maybe Juliet, do you have any examples of what kind of sun cream people should be buying in order to stop affecting and killing off coral reefs?
Yes, it's funny because when I was at Heathrow, I myself had to buy sun cream and I couldn't find one that was reef friendly. So what you need to do is look at the small print, and if you've got benzone, there are certain chemicals which are not reef friendly. Those that don't have the chemicals usually have a stamp saying reef friendly, and it's really, really important that we seek those out. There are some destinations that ban them. Palau, Hawaii, they've actually made reef unfriendly products illegal. So that's good. Can I add a point which was so important, and I felt adding to what Tom said, and I just wanted to say about travel, I just feel, because we're talking about stuff, and I think that's the problem, is to not sort of to push ourselves out of our comfort zones and not always consume everything that's offered to us as freebies and amenities, and really just minimize the stuff that we're using. Buy less, buy better, and just understanding that, being luxury doesn't mean we have to consume so much all the time. It's just engaging with people, having more difficult conversations or challenging conversations with people we meet along the way. It's shifting our perspective, because I'm thinking of our audience. They absolutely deserve to have the best holiday, and they don't want to feel guilty, but maybe just have a little look at how much you're consuming. I never touch the dressing gowns or the free slippers. I just don't do that. That's, small tweaks we can make to our behavioral, habits.
Point. There's a question here from Tatiana Jones about homestays, and do tour operators provide this? I think this is something that you do at Intrepid, isn't it, Zena? Do you have homestays as options in your holidays?
Absolutely, we do that a lot, and we often find that some of our best-selling trips, a best of Morocco, best of India, people will book it because of the, bucket list cities that they will be visiting, like Marrakesh or Chefchaouen, but they found that homestay in the middle of a village they never heard about was the highlight of the trip. So that's definitely what we're doing when we develop trips. We look for homestays. We look for also work with or develop even community-based tourism that would be, like a whole village or a whole range of different families that work together to actually build that form of stays that people really enjoy, because they get to really immerse themselves in the location and with the people that they get to spend the night with, and it's extremely appreciable type of stay within Intrepid trips.
Excellent, thank you. There was a question earlier about offsetting and where one can go to offset their emissions, and I realize it's a real quagmire as to which are the best offsets and how offsetting works. Rory, is that something that Which has done a survey on, or has any studies on which are the best offsetting companies and how one can start looking at where to find information about that?
It is something we have investigated. Again, really, really difficult to make informed decisions around. I think the calculator that we most recently were looking at was Flyzen, if I haven't got the name incorrect there. So there are numerous calculators out there. I think if you are a consumer, if you're really engaged, one of the things you can look at is plane types. So if you're flying to a destination, there's a couple of airlines to choose from. What type of plane are they going to use? Broadly speaking, this isn't always true, but older planes tend to be worse for the environment. The newer the plane, the better it is. If you've really got a few hours spare on a Sunday, you can start looking into load factor as well. The busier the plane is, the better for the environment. Also, I think in reality, if you're a consumer, and this is something that is of concern to you, the likes of Skyscanner now is publishing some sort of green ratings. I don't want to put people off by always saying it's really difficult to know and trust things. It's better to look and try and make an informed decision, because most of the time you probably are making a positive decision for the environment as well. So if you're interested in carbon emissions on flights, take a look at load factor, take a look at the aircraft type that's going to the destination, or if that sounds like far too much trouble on a Sunday, have a look at Skyscanner, which does a good job of kind of rating how green a flight is to a destination.
Great, thank you. I'm afraid we don't have time to get to other questions, but there is a lot of information out there, and I'm sure the panelists would be happy to have the discussions after if you were to contact them about volunteering or about the impact that their trips are having in destinations, etc. I would just really like to say a huge thank you to our panelists today, Juliet, Rory, Tom, and Zena. Thank you for you as well for taking the time to be part of this discussion on an early Sunday morning, especially when the sun is actually shining. Sorry, Juliet, you leave the country and the sun shines. We're hoping that you will be inspired not only to challenge companies where you want better answers, but how you can think about how your travels and what you do on holiday can bring change to the destinations and communities. There are incredible companies out there that really want you to help, that really want you to travel better, and they include Intrepid and Pura Aventura and the others that are part of the Travel by B Corp website, which is just newly launched a few weeks ago. Thank you again. Bye-bye.